I used to think endings sounded like doors slamming or suitcases snapping shut, loud enough to leave an echo. The truth is, a marriage can end in a kitchen at 8:12 a.m., with the refrigerator humming and someone wearing gym leggings saying, "I think I need to explore other options," like she's rearranging shelves. We'd been together almost 10 years, married 7, and familiar wasn't our weakness. It was our language. Dinners on Tuesdays that tasted like Wednesday leftovers, bills split in the app, the dance of who takes the trash when the bag looks deceptively light. I'm 38, an infrastructure tech at a mid-size firm where the servers don't panic unless people do. I never imagined having to stand with a coffee mug in my hand while my wife, Callie, said she'd outgrown us. It didn't start as cruelty. It started as a membership. An upscale fitness studio opened downtown with eucalyptus towels and glass rooms where trainers taught movement like it was a language only pretty people spoke. She joined on a trial and came home wearing the rubber band of a wrist day pass like a festival bracelet. Then came the strict diet, the trainer, the classes with names that sounded like verbs and punishments. I was proud of her commitment. The glow arrived not as vanity but as vitality. She moved differently, slept better, laughed like she meant to. The mirror loved her and she learned to love the mirror back. Then came the comments, the ones that arrived dressed as jokes. I could have done so much more if I figured myself out earlier. Not everyone makes the mistake of settling so young. The ground shifted half an inch every week, enough that over months the furniture felt wrong. She started curating her closet like a gallery, trading cotton for silk, flats for heels that clicked out a rhythm our hallway hadn't heard. Her trainer, a man with a smile calibrated at 70% warmth, sold her supplements as if selling a future. She bought bottles like promises. I kept stocking the pantry and setting timers for laundry and calling the plumber when the sink coughed up its old secrets. The morning she told me, she was blending spinach into a smoothie the color of permission. I stood there with coffee the color of habit. "I'm not happy," she said. "I want to see what else is out there." She said it softly, like someone reading a weather report when rain has already made up its mind. I set the mug down. The heat left my fingertips faster than the point. "If that's what's needed," I said. It felt like a sentence without a subject. She nodded once, factual. Then she added, "I'll be filing this week." The papers arrived 3 days later, folded in a courier envelope as if extra neatness could make demand polite. She wanted the house, a substantial portion of my savings, spousal support. She had a good job at a PR firm, and she'd picked up a small stable of freelance clients she liked to mention with a shrug, as if success was something she'd tripped into. She wasn't asking. She was expecting. She was performing what she'd been told she deserved by people who use microphones to narrate effort. I brought the papers to a lawyer recommended by a coworker, Delgado, a man whose office smelled like rye bread and toner. He read with his mouth a thin line, then looked up. "She's overreaching," he said. "Some folks mistake momentum for entitlement. We'll keep this simple. Facts, numbers, timelines, keep your head, don't take the bait." The first mediation took place in a neutral room, which is what they call rooms that have learned how to hold anger without staining. Callie arrived in a navy sheath dress with hair that obeyed and eyes that calculated. She looked phenomenal. She knew it. Her posture said she'd practiced. She made a point of glancing at my shirt, nothing wrong with it except the fact it wasn't a uniform for a new life. Her lawyer, a woman with a voice trained for quiet intimidation, spoke of aspiration, contribution, and sacrifice. My contribution, it seemed, was to be turned into narrative compost. Callie said I'd become complacent. She said she needed support to transition into the next phase of her professional development. She said our house spoke to her long-term well-being. I was grounded and stable and kind, which in this context read as heavy. I didn't flinch. I spoke in numbers. Our joint accounts, the spreadsheet I kept for home repairs, the way she'd paid down her car with bonuses while I covered unexpected deductibles. I mentioned her freelance retainers. My lawyer passed printouts across the table like bread. When her side dismissed my list as small, Delgado said, "Small truths build large verdicts." We ended without agreement. Callie stood, collected her handbag, and tossed a smile over her shoulder like a confetti handful meant for herself. "We'll let a judge sort the rest," she said, as if appealing to a referee in a game she'd already won. At home that night, the rooms felt overlit. She'd moved into a corporate rental near the studio with an exposed brick wall that looked good in photos. She left behind notes that pretended to help. "You should consider some cardio, it might help your mood. Maybe think about leveling up at work. It's not too late." I put each note in a manila folder labeled with the date, not because I was petty. Because paper remembers what people like to forget. News traveled like it does, not fast, just persistent. A colleague said she'd seen Callie at a new champagne bar with a man who looked like a billboard. Another voice chimed in. "He teaches the Saturday performance conditioning class. He wears confidence like cologne." The word paraded made the rounds. So did the word glow. I waited for jealousy and found only an odd combination of embarrassment and resolve. Let her be chosen by every room. I needed a different kind of win. Delgado asked me to gather everything: bank statements, texts, screenshots of social posts where Callie captioned selfies with love letters to reinvention. I pulled late nights at the dining table with a stapler and a pencil, and the dull thrill of someone building a case out of receipts. I found an old message from her to a friend, sent months before the kitchen announcement. "He's nice, but I want a man who matches my energy. Once I'm fully there, I'll make the jump." It wasn't proof of malice, it was proof of intent. It mattered. Mediation number 2 was worse because both sides had decided they were right. Callie wore cream. Her lawyer wore victory on layaway. They pushed for the house with a narrative that treated floorboards like personality traits. This home is integral to her well-being, to the life she's built. Delgado asked, built or curated? He slid across records of her income, including the consulting checks that landed irregularly but landed nonetheless. She rolled her eyes at the word consulting, as if people who don't sweat for their money don't count it correctly. She said she needed space commensurate with the life she was making. I said there were 2 incomes, 2 contributions, 2 people. I said equitable, not easy. I said we should sell and split or refinance with a buyout. She laughed, though no one had told a joke. After the session, she showed up at the house while I was at work, texted a photo of the bedroom closet emptied of her side like a pulled tooth, and left a bottle of that protein powder on the counter with a sticky note. "Might help." The charge for the protein showed up on our old joint card, the one we'd frozen for emergencies. I declined it through the app and added a screenshot to the folder. Days later, an alert pinged. A luxury wellness resort in the next state had processed a $1,742 weekend retreat on the same dormant joint line. I sat quietly until the panic sprinted out. Then I disputed the charge, filed the fraud claim, and forwarded the email thread to Delgado. He called. "She's testing fences. Let the credit company spank that hand. We'll bring it to court." I started seeing who she'd become in public. Confidence sharpened her into someone who edited conversations mid-sentence if they weren't going where she needed them to. A mutual acquaintance told me that Callie had said she finally felt in the right leg. She wasn't cruel as much as she was convinced. Self-improvement had turned into a mirror so bright it blinded, and if you're always dazzled, everyone else looks dim. The man, performance conditioning scarf, had a name: Evan. He wore white sneakers that never got dirty and styled his hair like it was paid to stay. I ran into them at a farmer's market on a Saturday. I should have been securing a new dishwasher hose, and for a second I understood the appeal. 2 people bouncing in sync. They looked like music, no song I owned. He shook my hand and said, "Good to meet you, man," with the false warmth of someone auditioning for loyalty. Callie introduced me as my ex, premature in a way she meant to be declarative. I smiled. The plums in her bag flashed purple like a bruise you don't touch. That afternoon, a text arrived: "Maybe you should look at your career. It's never too late to reach for more." I typed, "I like my work," which is not the same as saying I like myself. I didn't hit send. I forwarded the message to Delgado instead. He replied, "Keep a clean transcript." It wasn't about vengeance. It was about clarity. I kept my routines. wiped down the counters, walked the neighborhood at dusk when porches told the truth about how people felt. I fixed the wobbly shelf in the laundry room and felt the small, dumb pride that comes from putting something back into plumb. I ate the dinners I knew how to make. I slept enough. I did my job. The world didn't applaud because stability isn't a performance. But the server room hummed the right pitch, and the tickets got closed, and the new junior tech learned how to not panic when things that are not emergencies feel like emergencies. I remembered I was good at this. A friend suggested I start working out too, as if matching her trajectory was the proof of my worth. I joined the cheap gym by the hardware store where treadmills squeaked and the towels smelled like detergent that didn't have a price tag. I showed up on Tuesdays and Fridays, did what the laminated sheet suggested, and learned to like the simple miracle of a heartbeat that thanked me. No one took photos. No one asked for transformation. My body didn't glow. It just worked harder. Callie's attorney sent a revised settlement that looked like the first one except the numbers wore different shoes. Delgado sent back a draft like a mirror held low. Fair, split the equity. Everyone keeps their own retirement funds up to the date of separation. No support. Split ordinary debts. Any post-separation charges on joint accounts are to be reimbursed. We put it on letterhead that didn't apologize. Her camp scheduled depositions. I put on a decent shirt and answered questions from a woman trained to choose a word and clamp its jaws around the throat of a sentence. She asked about my finances, about the hours I worked, about whether I'd ever discouraged Callie from pursuing her goals. No, I said. When she bought a membership, we talked about the cost and then we paid it. When she wanted to go to the retreat last summer, I said, if you want it, go. When she took on more clients, I did more laundry. When the sink broke, I called the plumber. Did you ever call her lazy? No. Did you call her selfish? No. Did you resent her? Not until she turned me into ballast. That night, I dreamt the house was a raft, and she was rowing hard in circles while I held the mast because the wind wouldn't choose a side. When I woke, I made eggs and ate them slow. The fork felt vetted. Court doesn't look like it does on TV unless the TV show's budget is honest. Fluorescent lights that flatten everyone to the same color of tired. A judge whose patience is a professional resource. A clerk whose expression suggests they know how the story ends long before anyone reads it to them. We sat at separate tables that wanted to be farther apart. Callie wore a suit that suggested she knew what successful people wear when they need to be believed. I wore a jacket that fit. Her lawyer told a story. People in her profession are trained to tell it well. Callie had grown into herself, into her potential. The marriage, stable as it had been, couldn't hold who she was becoming. Time, effort, investment, in health, in career, these were contributions. She needed support to launch from the stuck place into the correct air. I watched the judge watch the performance like someone listening to a popular song from a decade ago, familiar, catchy, suspicious. Delgado went last. He carried a binder he had not named out loud. He talked slowly. He said the words equitable and contribution without needing to italicize them. He talked about incomes that were not lopsided. He said stability is not an insult and routine is not abuse. He slid documents forward with the rhythm of a metronome, teaching a beginner how to keep time. Bank statements, pay stubs, the freeze record on the joint line, the dispute on the resort charge, the arbitrary listings of protein powders. The dates lined up like fence posts that belonged to the same property. Callie's lawyer objected to the inclusion of text messages, context, tone, privacy. The judge allowed them in, cautious, unthrilled. Delgado didn't read the worst of them, not because they weren't permitted, but because he didn't need to. He selected 3. The one where she told a friend, once I'm fully there, I'll make the jump. The one where she wrote, I deserve a house that matches who I am now. The one she sent me the week after she moved out, maybe you should level up. It's not too late to try. He didn't smirk. He didn't look at her. He let the words sit there until the room decided what they meant. Then came a moment no one had scheduled. The conditioning instructor boyfriend's lawyer submitted a sworn statement. He wasn't present. His words traveled via paper like a visitor who didn't take off his shoes. In the statement, he said that conversations about the future had occurred, that those futures assumed financial security contingent on Callie receiving a favorable outcome. It didn't matter whether he had been vengeful or righteous. It mattered that the narrative the other side preferred, the brave individual launching from a dead weight, had acquired a price tag in the margin. Under cross, Callie tried to soften a year's worth of sharp corners. She said she'd been venting. She said jokes read meaner in transcripts. She said she wasn't trying to profit. She was trying not to be punished for becoming herself. She said, "I lost myself for years," and as she said it I remembered that the word lost is 2 letters away from the word cost. The judge's eyebrows did that small domestic movement eyebrows do when they're not busy that nonetheless shifts a whole room. Delgado closed by returning to the boring arithmetic that decides lives. He said, 2 incomes, no dependents, no accusation of violence or betrayal, no long-term career breaks. He said, sell or buy out, split savings equitably, each their own retirements as of the date of separation, debts according to use, reimburse improper post-separation charges. He said, this is called fair. The ruling came back with punctuation. No spousal support. Home to be sold and equity divided evenly unless one party refinanced within 90 days to buy out the other at appraised value minus closing costs. Retirement accounts to be retained individually with no division beyond the separation date. Joint credit lines to be closed within 10 days. Any post-separation charges to be reimbursed within 30 days. Each party pays their own attorney's fees. The judge admonished Callie's casual use of joint credit post-separation and noted that self-improvement is not a legal argument for entitlement. The words were dry. The relief was wet. Outside, the winter air put its hand on my face. Callie approached, shoulders squared against wind that hadn't arrived. The performance had drained away. She looked younger and older at once. I made a mistake, she said, and her voice found a register I used to know. I got caught up. It felt good to be wanted. I thought I could make this into something new. You did make it into something new, I said gently. It just isn't the shape you wanted. We stood there 2 feet apart, close enough to smell the lemon of her detergent. Come to therapy with me, she said suddenly. Maybe we can, she stopped. There's no word that can both rewind and not condescend. You filed because you believed there was better, I said, careful, not cruel. And there might be, you just can't fund it with what we built. The sentence surprised me. Not for its content, for its lack of heat. She reached for my arm, the way she used to when a curb rose up unannounced, and I stepped back because helpful and harmful look like twins in certain lights. She nodded, okay. Then quieter, I did love you. I know, I said, me too. We both knew a truth. Love can be inadequate without anyone doing anything monstrous. It's an unglamorous truth. The judge doesn't rule on it. The clerk doesn't file it. It's the fact that puts the light out when the show is over. The house sold in spring. We did the thing grown people do when something once precious becomes inventory. Signed, initialed, and made piles. I took the dining table we'd fought over not because I won, but because it fit in the small road of life I was choosing. She took the couch because the couch had learned her shape. We let friends adopt the plant that had refused to die and thrived out of spite. The realtor left a bottle of Prosecco on the kitchen island the morning we closed, as if grief should be carbonated. I signed the check for the movers and watched them put a rolled rug into the truck like a person being carried toward an ambulance. Callie stood in the doorway holding the house key with a careful grip, then set it on the counter with a gentleness that made something in me tilt. We didn't hug. Hugging is a promise you don't make if you've spent a season learning to tell the exact truth. My apartment is on the 3rd floor of a building where the hall smells like other people's onions and old mail. My living room faces west, so the light at 5:30 shows up like a guest who brings dessert. I bought a small couch that didn't try to impress the wall. I bought dishes that matched on purpose. I put the dining table by the window and sat at one corner like a man learning how to inhabit space without performance. Work grew a little like a vine that finally found the lattice. I took a certification exam because it felt good to know something on purpose. A newer tech asked me how I keep my cool. I said, "This isn't a hospital." Then, because that sounded glib, I added, "People look to us to steady the room." It felt like I was overhearing myself. I joined a no-frills boxing gym where no one took videos because everyone was busy breathing. I learned that lace-up gloves make you humble. I learned my body could say thank you to me if I asked in the right verb tense. I lost a little roundness and found some air. I didn't tell anyone about it beyond the trainer who said, "Nice work," and meant, "You showed up again." Friends invited me out and I said yes sometimes and no sometimes, and both responses kept me human. A woman at a trivia night said she liked the way I listened. I said I liked the way she made eye contact, like a sentence that knows where it ends. We exchanged numbers and didn't doom either of us with fate. It felt like a good design choice. Callie's name still lived in my phone, but we didn't test it often. Once, she texted me a photo of new running shoes and said, "I beat my 5-mile time by 4 minutes." I wrote back, "That's fast." She replied with a lightning bolt emoji. Another time, I sent a picture of the dining table set for one, not as a statement but as an orphan joke. She responded with a thumbs up that didn't mean anything except we both were trying not to be cruel to each other by accident. Mutual friends said that she and Evan ended things after a fight that sounded like a review written by two different critics. One called it bravery, the other called it ambition. He moved on to someone else whose life could be arranged as a before and after photo. She kept going to the studio. She posted less. The captions grew quieter. Maybe the mirror had learned a more compassionate angle. Maybe she had. Maybe I was projecting a story where there wasn't one. I saw her once months later, downtown on a Sunday. The sidewalks had that wet look cities get when they try to be clean. She held a cardboard cup and wore a hoodie, hair pulled back without ceremony. We smiled like people who survived something and weren't interested in replay. She asked if I was well. I said I was. I asked about her family. She said her mom had taken up watercolors and the dog was older and trying to make peace with squirrels. We laughed because squirrels require concessions. We stood there a minute in a soft, unperformed silence. Then she touched my arm, not claiming, and said, "Hey, thank you for not making me into the worst version of myself in court." I said, "Thank you for not making me into a ghost while we were still married." It was the closest we came to apology. It was enough. On the 1-year mark of the kitchen morning, I didn't commemorate it. I made coffee and eggs and read the manual for a piece of equipment at work I'd been avoiding because competence is a beautiful, quiet drug. I texted my sister a photo of the sky at 7:13 p.m. because it was a ridiculous pink, and sometimes the only thing to do with beauty is send it to someone who will say, "Yep. Here's what I know that I didn't know then." Transformation's invoice always arrives. If a person pays with empathy, they keep the friends who will carry their couch safely around corners. If they pay with entitlement, the delivery includes loneliness and a small print clause about returns. Callie transformed, and there is a grace in refusing to pretend that physical courage is moral courage. I didn't transform so much as repair. There is a different grace in learning how to tighten a loose self with a screwdriver and patience, to sand down the edge that catches your sleeve. People ask sometimes, "How did you not fall apart?" I did fall apart. I just learned how to sweep. I learned how to label the boxes. I learned to stop picking at the scab of the word deserve. I learned that being a decent man is not a plot twist but a practice. And I learned to cook rice correctly, which for some reason felt like a miracle. There's a photo on my wall now, me, my table, a plant that is alive against the odds. The frame is simple. The room is small. The light hits just right some evenings. I sit and look at it sometimes while the server room in my head hums the one note it knows how to keep. The life I'm building does not glow. It holds. It holds. If there's a moral, it isn't tidy. It's this: be careful what you turn into currency. Some loves can afford it, some can't. Some futures are credit, some are cash. And some mornings in kitchens with refrigerators humming witness, people choose the honest math. That's not tragedy. That's adulthood. And if once in a while a thought about her shows up like a small animal that wants to be fed, I don't chase it away. I put out a dish with a little memory and a lot of forgiveness and watch it eat without naming it mine. Then I rinse the dish. Then I go to bed. Then I wake up and go to work. And the servers don't panic unless people do. And I don't much anymore.